I got that, but I texted it to you. I couldn't get like an email it, and I actually. Yeah, then I can close it.
So you don't.
Yeah. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. We're going to start, and I need to click record. It is already recording, so I'll be the same thing for. All right, guys, thank you for coming to Central City Neighborhood Council tonight. So we're going to go ahead and do introductions around the room. I'm Austin Taylor. I'm the board chair of Central City Neighborhood Council, and I live at about 7th South 4th East. Let's turn it over to Jenny, and then go this way.
Jenny Starley, I'm the vice chair for the neighborhood council, and I live on approximately 30 East and 70 South.
Tim Cosgrove, anybody liaison in District 4 for Mayor Mendenhall.
Beginning Isaacson on the secretary for Center City Neighborhood Plan and third.
All right.
Hi, Greg Miller, State Representative, House District 24, which words. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Brad.
I'm Matt Robbins. I just live at Block East of here, and I'm on Central City Neighborhood Council as our social media manager. Thanks.
Central City.
Thanks, guys.
Rebecca Allen for the city smallest.
Marie Stewart, community liaison for District 4.
Jean Stevenson and I live at the club, which is on 150 South and 300 East.
I'm Brett Anderson. I'm Gene's neighbor at the club, so we live very close.
Kevin Garner, I live in the Central City. Ben Engel, on the board of Central City Neighborhood Council, and I live at 100 South between 2nd and East.
I'm Seth. I'm on the board, and I live a block north.
Hey, I'm Matt. I actually live in Sugar House. I'm working on a project with other neighborhood councils to summarize the meetings. Nice to meet you.
I'm Troy Salfield. I'm Central City's transportation committee lead, and I live at 4th East and 2nd South.
I'm still Brandy Burnham and I live on Silver South and 50 South Public Safety.
I'm Councilmember Lucas Chavez. I actually just moved to the new Grand Hotel, and I have an investment property on 13th East. Thanks for having me.
And then my name is Nate Brown. I am a resident. I've been on 300 East and 100 South.
Thanks, and it's good to hear that you're still Brandy, even after that.
No, it's a wonder.
All right, so just, oh, and you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Kara. I live on 7th South and 30 East.
Thanks, Kara. And you're on the land use committee, right?
Correct.
Cool, thanks, Kara. Okay, so just to touch what we're gonna hit on our agenda today, we've got our traditional updates we always do from neighborhood council committees and then city government representatives. And most of today's time is going to be dedicated to our 2 House of Representatives members who cover Central City. So Grant Miller's here. We also are expecting Jen. I don't know how to pronounce her last name fully.
JDP, that's what we call her.
JDP is what we call her. So the way we're going to do it is Grant will have 10 minutes to say whatever he wants to us, and we're not going to interrupt him. And then JDP will have the same thing. After that, we have 30 minutes where we will talk with them, they'll talk with us, just open discussion with all of them. So we wanted to give it a generous amount of time. But at the very end, we have a special logo update from Seth. Seth's been redesigning the Central City Neighborhood Council logo. And so he has a few different possibilities for us to look at and to vote on. So that's what we'll end the meeting with. So let's go ahead and hit the neighborhood committees. Let's see, Troy, you want to talk transportation for us?
Yeah. So we saw the mayor's recommended budget came out last night. RCIP, which is for improving the 7th South and 7th East crossing, actually creating a crossing in the first place. Right now, nothing exists there. That one was not selected. I suspect it's because it was over $1 million and the budget is very slim this year. But we did have some other news in there as well, I believe, for the, I think it's the street overlays or one of the other CIP funding, allocations. They're hoping to get in about 3 blocks of, reconstructing 60s. And that would actually link up with our CIP last year that was having some safety improvements there. So that's some good news. They're trying to like bring those 2 pots of money at the same time. That way they're being more efficient and spending less overall by combining those 2 projects. And then I did bring up some things about the construction sites. We talked about it a lot last year, try to get the council to kind of like enforce things better and just like be better stewards of that. But this spring, I've been noticing there's been like a lot of like, there's not been a lot of enforcement. Construction crews have just been doing whatever they want. There's one in particular that is the reason why I reached out to both Tim and Ava. At 300 East, 550 South, there's a sidewalk detour and biking detour. Both of those have been deficient for about a month and a half or more. And like I contacted the city, the person who's responsible for this all the way a month and a half ago. And I got no responses. So that's why I reached out to the city administration just to see like, hey, like we need to do something about this. And then I had another issue pop up outside my door and I'm like, yeah, this has to stop. But fortunately, that one site at 550 South 300 East has gotten better. The sidewalk's back open. The bike lane part is still dangerous, but I guess I need to have a chat with someone and maybe force them to ride it themselves and see the danger they're causing.
Is that the one where the fence got moved to the bear?
Yeah. And then they have a closure for the bike lane where you're essentially forced to merge last second, absolutely no visibility, and that's still there, unfortunately. They moved the sign into the rear of there, which I guess is better than the. I don't think they're aware of the problem that they're causing. But yeah, at the least though, the ones that I did bring up to you specifically, like the big things got fixed, which is good. I just wish that it didn't take a whole month and a half and for me to like reach out to city administration to fix it. And the other thing that's frustrating to me is that it was like that for a month and a half. They probably weren't paying fees unless they were fined, I hope they were fined. But they essentially started paying these fees and they did not have the sidewalk. So they should have paid for using the sidewalk space, in my opinion. But I know it's like hard to do that because you didn't go out there and say something. But I'm just curious, like what happens if, or if you know about that, what happens when they're not doing, like they're not putting up their side of the parking. Because they did agree to set up that sidewalk detour. And because they did that, they didn't have to pay the closure fee. I'm not mistaken.
I can answer that. I was gonna say, so it would be where enforcement and finance, they would be able to backlog and backdate. We might need some evidence, if you have a photo.
Yeah, so the city has to put it up.
I was gonna say
it's in my SSC already, or it's in an email.
So they definitely can backdate in terms of what you do with the permit. It's not in the city's favor, obviously, with pulling permits, but it's more of a reminder. So it is a slap on the wrist, but just out of fairness for them to comply. So we can look at short term and then we can.
Yeah, I appreciate it, because I think if they're not, like for the time that they weren't in compliance, they should be paying for it. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think the city should have to come back and say like, you're doing this wrong. And then after this, we'll find you if you do something wrong. I think it should just be part of the process itself. Like that is what they agreed to do. So I don't think there should be a grace period because you're endangering people by taking back.
Okay. Thanks, for anything else? Update us on?
I'm sure I missed something, but there's the 2 big things.
Okay, thanks. Public safety, Brandy?
Tougher Park is looking really good. The police, I guess, added what do they call those cameras? Just mobile camera?
It says they go
The
in
mobile
cameras,
cameras,
they're in a public park.
Okay, and I had a question about those. Do they do audio and stuff, like if they wanna talk through it, or is it just picture, or how does it work?
It's just the video.
Okay, because there was one at 7-Eleven one time, and it was actually live talking to someone or.
That was not ours. That
Oh,
was one of the other companies that does.
But it's been very helpful because my 3 cameras, they started sitting away from all 3 of them, so I didn't really hear or see things really well. And when I mentioned it in North, within a couple of days, it was there. So it's been very helpful along with the foot patrols that they did for weeks, like really intensely. That's helped a lot too. So, and then I just got an update about the park redesign that's supposed to be in the summer. It's gonna be like late summer, early fall. From what I read in the transcript of the PNUT meeting. I forgot what it stands for, it's the public lands.
Parks, natural.
Yeah.
Trail somewhere.
Yes, so that's still on to go as planned, with some changes and stuff, but it didn't really get behind. Staffing changes and stuff. Other than that, nothing too crazy happening, I guess.
Right. Then, do you have anything, Chelsea, right, do you have anything for land use that you want to share? Okay.
All good. I guess the two things is that we're gonna be submitting, a letter in regard to the, family definition change. So perhaps if there's time today, we can discuss it as a group, but if not, feel free to just email, I guess, Austin and he'll forward it to us. If you have lots of opinions, you wanna make sure to get into that letter. And then also I did some work to just create a little map that shows, which areas in our central city neighborhood are, which like land use are going in front of the planning commission or being asked for zoning updates. I'm pretty sure that Building Salt Lake does this, but it's behind a paywall. And so I'm trying to keep up with what's going on, writing comments or things so that you can see, kind of look at one map. And see what's currently on the table. There's never more than a small handful at a time, as far as I can tell, but that was something I was working on this month. And also Gilball Gardens is up for being on the landmark something, which let me know if you're against that, but I feel strong positive feelings and I think that's the general feeling, so we'll write a letter in support, even though that's not consensus as well.
Yeah. So on that, the change of the definition of family, we could have time tonight if people want to talk about it. So could you just tell everyone briefly like what the proposal is, and then we can see if people want to put some time on the agenda. There might be a possibility we can.
Yeah, I will caveat with, I haven't looked at this in a couple of weeks, so I could be totally wrong. We need to look at Tim or Ava to give us a correction. But right now in the city, a family is defined as two non-related people with biological children, or no more than, I believe, 3 non-related people in a house, such as roommates. And the city is proposing to get rid of that definition of family and really just talk about occupancy within dwellings, single homes or apartments.
Yeah. And I think like when I saw it, essentially the impact that it would have on our neighborhood is right now you can only have 3 unrelated people living in a housing unit together at the most. So, roommates kind of situation. The proposal is that there's no regulation on how many roommates can live together. And so it's just all based on how many people you can fit inside of.
Right, occupancy, which, from my perspective, I think that allows for non-normative family structures in a really positive way. And allows for, a 4-bedroom house to have 4 people, even if they're not related. And so, I'm for this proposal in general and also recognize that there could be some concerns about extra cars on the streets. I know that our neighbors to the east are really concerned about extra trash, that kind of thing, especially close to the university. But, I'd be curious, there wasn't gonna be doing that in the proposal about how many houses might be out of compliance now, how many bedrooms are currently unused because of the ordinance. So I feel like there's some missing information there.
I think sometimes in building, apartment building or condominium building, you want some sense of restrictions because you don't want to turn it into a fraternity house.
For sure.
And that's the risk when you don't control the amount of unrelated people. It becomes a party place for people of a certain, either in school or of an age, and it does become disruptive to the rest of the people in the building.
Yeah, so just by show of hands, can I ask if people are interested in talking about this tonight and we might be able to put on the agenda? Just so we can get feedback to land use. Okay, we'll pencil it in to see if we can fit it after the logo update. So,
Carrot, I think you read that responses are due by the 15th, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so next Friday.
Yeah, I know it's especially a big deal in places with universities and colleges, that it's always a big debate. I think we've hit all the neighbor council things, so.
Yeah.
Anything, Matt, anything? Cool, thanks. All right, let's turn it over to city stuff.
Cool.
Should we start, let's start with Ava.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, good to see you. Sorry if you've seen my name in the news. I just wanted to start out by saying, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And that is, there is a judicial process in place. It is being made up as it kind of comes along. This is the first time in city history where we've seen this type of instance occur. That being said, I'm not at liberty to speak in details, but I have, of course, acquired 2 different legal counsels to help structure this, and that way to provide as much just procedure as possible. That way, we don't distract from some serious tones in the city, which is 12.5% city tax, property tax increase to the budget, as well as other changes to the budget. So what I have in front of me, this is the biggest one. I want to talk about the budget and what's happening. It's not just a 12.5% increase. I want you to think about it from a $13.5% million increase of public funds and what we want out of those funds, or those services we want or not. A lot of that distribution is going back into affordable housing, so $10 million of that is going to distribute back into affordability. It's not deeply affordable, so it's gonna be around 60% to 80% AMI, so that's still hitting $1,200 to $1,500 a room. And then infrastructure and street maintenance, of course, is a big part of this, specifically in the Rose Park area. And then park improvements is something that we will be seeing as District 4. If this passes, we'll see an increase to park infrastructure investment at Washington Square, which is in deep need of reconstruction. And then a lot of this is going back to overcome operating costs that have increased. A lot of this just comes back to compensation and benefits. And then public safety is receiving a pretty significant increase, I'd say. So in total, it is going to affect some of our, especially fixed income communities. So I'm trying to tour Friendship Manor. So a lot of our senior and aging adult communities are the ones that are seeing the most impact. A lot of those folks that are on Social Security are the ones that I'm hearing from immediately. So we'll have a truth and taxation hearing, but that happens later on. So you will have the opportunity to comment going forward as we continue to budget. We legally have to pass a budget no later than the last date of June 30th. So that way by July 1st, it can be implemented into the fiscal year. Again, the Mayor Baird presented it. So I have the budget book in my backpack. I have not read through it yet. We stayed up, till midnight, and then I stayed up till 3 a.m. last night, just trying to decompress from that meeting. So is there any questions about budget right now? And then I'd love to hear from you all, of course, because I do think it's a really significant increase. And just in general, we want to match it with the services we want. And then the camping ordinance, go ahead.
I think I heard, let's make sure I hear you right, $10 million of that budget is gonna go towards affordable housing.
That's right.
It's not gonna decrease the price of 1 bedroom from $1,500, because right now I pay $1,400 for a 1 bedroom. So that investment's not going to do anything to lower that.
So it's subsidy to build new units. So it wouldn't lower the current units that you're in. You're in the units right over here by coffee break still, right? Yeah, so those ones are deeply affordable and it wouldn't change because they've already been built. So that developer has already, and it's that's a nonprofit housing, so they've already locked in their rate. Yeah, so it wouldn't decrease the price on them. Yeah, but great question. So this is going to subsidize new development, new build in the city. I want to talk about real quick the camping ordinance and what that is going to do to change. So real quick, you may have heard of this. Brandy called in last night. It's changing the camping and obstructing public property and parks rules text amendment. So what it's specifically changing is it changes, it increases the ban on camping, which is currently banned from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the city. It increases it to the public right of way at sidewalks, park strips, plazas, streets, and then publicly owned areas, specifically schools, and areas around churches. And so it really offers those protections. I've heard all different types of scenarios in this. I think one thing that I do want to clarify is this ordinance does not actually help people get into housing, but it could create a method of accountability. So I did want to spend some time here, if we have even a minute, I just wanted to hear from folks how you're understanding it, what else we can ask from PD. Obviously, PD is getting pushed to the front of trying to respond to homelessness. I don't believe that is the right procedure in which we should respond to it. If we believe in getting people into medical attention, rehabilitation, or into housing. That being said, we also need to balance the reality that we still have encampments or encroachment on easements that are public right of ways. I've definitely seen that in downtown. We see that in the central city areas, so just kind of wanted to get a feel for where folks are at.
Definitely, just time wise, we do 3 minutes.
Yes,
and
that's great. Great. Anybody?
Oh, I have a question, actually, it might be more for me, but, as far as the budget goes, is there plans to allocate, money for more social workers, so they have them like staffed fully 24/7 on all 3 shifts available, needed? Cause I know they're not like full, like all the time, like 24 hours a day, like on all the shifts, correct?
There is, I haven't heard anything about that yet,
So,
Cause that would be good to have that,
Sounds like-
exactly, because when I call in, I often ask for social workers, it's not necessarily legal issues, more mental health. But, they can't just send a social worker, they send an officer and then one, in addition, right?
so the mayor did ask each department for a 5% cut.
Mhm.
A lot of that was capital improvement projects or projects themselves. There is no increase to FTEs. So no, we don't see an increase to social workers, so the rapid response team that the city currently has.
Oh,
Yeah. And the parks rangers are gonna lose 2 FTEs,
okay.
so they are gonna receive 2 cuts. Those people, one is an empty position, one is not.
Okay.
Related to the camping ordinance though, were there any questions? I mean, it is pretty significant. That being said, the camping ordinance does have enough nuance that it is at the discretion of the officer to apply it if it passes. Again, these are about tools. I would say, generally speaking, I just want to remind everyone, we have to provide folks, dignity and process. I can tell you that the judicial process is not easy to navigate. If we see an increase of citations, which we have seen in the last year because of the public safety plan that's been implemented, that was required by the state, if you remember in 2025, the mayor and city council responded to that. We saw a significant increase in citations, and that being said, we know that in the upcoming year, most likely we will require an excess judge with excess administration and LBA funding to provide access of services to folks. But in general, what I see is that this could create accountability, meaning it moves people, so it's a Band-Aid solution. It likely is gonna increase citations, but it is to an extent a response to the needs that we're seeing in some of our communities where they can't get a response, so. I just kind of wanna hear what you're saying, but I do wanna share, in my mind, I likely will favor this if we're able to overcome the other symptoms like judicial processing and then rapid response to mental health and then rehousing. We absolutely still need shelter capacity, and for better or for worse, the state's response has changed recently, I would say.
Question, and I'm sorry, I have not read the ordinance, just a little bit of updates, online. But, so does this also include people that live in their vehicles?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, oh, it does, excuse me, thank you. So it does, it also includes people that are currently living in vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is, it's pretty common at this point, I would say, it's
It's very
becoming very common.
I think I have 3 cars
Students.
on my street that
Yeah.
rotate, for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And so, but if they don't have another mean or a place to stay, if the city or government is not providing services for them, and that's their option, then, why would we, I don't see why we would cite them for that, if there's.
We usually don't, especially if they're compliant with moving and parking,
Yeah.
different places. They aren't creating a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't.
Problems, like when they'll dump the sewage.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
yeah,
like that, and there's like trash and needles everywhere,
Right.
then yes, but if they're. Buy in, they're just trying to do whatever they can do, that's where the discretion comes in, we absolutely.
So the police officers will have that discretion outside of.
My understanding for the duplicative policy is to staff in a way that a judge could process and prosecute. eliminate serial offenders. Obviously, I've heard from people say, well, just have our officers, apply the law judiciously as is, but I think to your point, and this is where we can push the administration, is to say, yeah, we recognize it's a problem. We recognize that there's symptoms of homelessness that we're not prepared as communities to take on. We also recognize we have empty lots in our city that could be subsidized temporarily as places where we know there's people that are living there. There's city workers that are living in their vehicles. I've met people that are pretty, just integrated into society in a way that you would expect, that choose to live in vehicles. Because it is so costly to live in our city. So, I just want to say, I don't think there's a right or wrong for an opinion. I do worry that this policy, I think it comes up with the intention of helping fix, and I just worry that it won't actually fix it. And that it just puts officers further at the forefront of the system, so.
Can I end with just one question, and we'll turn it to Sam, so, yeah, we were wondering, during the investigation, do you still have the ability to vote as a council member? And so you'll still be going to council meetings, just like voting on stuff,
Yes,
but you're not in leadership, and you can't speak on behalf of the council for the media, kind of thing, right?
yeah, so all it does is, I can't speak to the media,
Yeah.
which, whatever the worst, kind of didn't happen, I can speak as an individual, so. Nothing really changes, to be honest, other than I'm not vice chair, but I get to call Danny and you at the city as another employee of the city.
Yeah.
So, again, take this seriously. I want to give you all the opportunity to learn about these findings. We also have to let that process follow through. And like I said, I really believe in truth prevailing and injustice, and I think in this case, the most important thing we can do as a community is try to move forward as best as possible. And for me, I've said this, I like to be forthright and kind, and it's really is a privilege to be a council member. And I don't take that lightly, and I think the most important thing is, as I look to this district, I hope that whatever occurs, that we always have leadership that we can find and rely on, so.
Okay, we'll definitely be asking you to come back and
Tell us, Austin
update us.
already told me he wants to be my book manager. Yeah, he's very pleased.
Yes, the information makes sense, so thank you.
Is there a timeline on the, I think that the investigation will take?
Yeah,
July 1st is when it was announced, and it could be so.
And we just open that until we go.
okay,
Sorry,
so
that's-
it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, we're just having to start with, and I can get it first. Yeah, we'll do some right there back then, so.
Thanks for understanding. Severe ADHD, so I might look like I'm methodic attention, but really I just have a lot of energy and I'm top texting all of that currently, so. It's kind of strange in Central City. I've noticed a slight uptick in robbery. If anyone follows our statistics, our open data, it's there for everyone to look at. If you don't know how to look it up, come find me. Brandy's like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's open data. You can find all that kind of stuff. Just to be aware of what's going on and different trends. We saw a trend for a while. Someone pretending to be hurt on the side of the road, someone would pull over to help them, and then someone would jump out and rob them, steal their car, kind of thing. So that was happening for a little while. This is different, but just be cognizant of your surroundings, that kind of thing. Slight uptick in motor vehicle burglaries as well, but that's kind of an ever-changing heat map and trend. Did recently have a meeting with the Providence Police Departments. They requested the Neighborhood Watch reach out if they want to be part of that. So I told them I'd let you know.
Yeah, resident lives there, she never came.
He's from Providence.
Okay, so their management, they want to put it out for all the residents and just be attacked part of the community. And then one of our squads is doing we call them COP projects, they're just community oriented policing projects down the corridor between 100, 200 south and 300 east. They're doing speed enforcement, and we're also looking into trying to get flashing lights on the crosswalk right there, so people can cross.
But that'll be a bit of a process, but it's just one thing that squad in particular is looking at to try and help people to get flags or anything in the meantime, we're gonna do it. So if you do live in that area, don't speed for the next little while, I will be. Just a little FYI, but it really is trying to address a big problem. If you've ever been mine, people just fly, and there's so many people on foot in that area, so. Any ideas for COP projects in your areas? Love to hear about it. Our officers, our squads do a project every month, so they're always open to, hey, what are you guys experiencing? What are your ideas? Let's do it. Let's work together. Any questions for me?
Is there anything down, like crime wise, that the?
Oh, yeah.
Any positive? I'm looking at the crime dashboard, and so green means things increased or they went down?
Green is good.
Good, okay, so that's anything that's improving, red is not bad.
Red, bad, green, good.
Violent, rips up, that's true.
Well, again, be cognizant of the number, and the change average per year. So the one extra, but no, none of it's good. And last month was our sexual assault awareness month. Did a project with our bars and restaurants again to try and raise awareness. We handed out drink covers, you know, for people to cover their drink while they're in the bars and restaurants or on a date or whatever, to just try and cut down on the GHB and the, you know, the day rate in that area.
Does that happen a lot with the assaults and stuff, those GHB used a lot in that?
Some things.
Something.
It's
Good ones.
yeah, pretty good number of people reporting waking up and not going on the other stuff. Any other questions?
Thank you.
And I kind of say, thank you so much for all of the work that you do for Central City, and you've been really great in communication with all of us, and also, would you please send a message to all of PD works in Central City, how grateful we are for their service.
I don't know if you have anything.
I do. I'm not showing them. Our biggest update is resource fair on Friday. We have 35 participating organizations. A big show of resources in one spot at your top side. So if you know anyone that might need something, it'll be.
Oh. Thank you. Okay, Tim has slides for us. Then we'll
Thank you. So, you know, I came last month and talked about the budget. I gave a budget briefing. And then last night, Mayor Mendenhall gave her proposed fiscal year 2027 budget to City Council that they shared. This was a difficult budget to build. I saw just watching the mayor work with all the department heads and the chairs for months on end. Inflation's at 3.5%. You know, our costs keep going up. Councilmember Lopez Chavez alluded to some of the difficult cuts that we had to make, the positions that we had to set aside for this year. At the same time that we keep receiving demands for increases. So the total fiscal year budget is just $2,087,000,000. Here. The enterprise funds are dedicated funds that goes directly to services, so whether for the airport, use the airport or public utilities. That right there is over $1.5 billion, with the other enterprise funds, $1.5 billion. So you can see those funds are pretty much dedicated. What I'm going to talk about is the general fund, which is almost $500 million, $498,863,000. Just kind of starting to put 5 million. Yeah. So our general fund budget is focusing on safe neighborhoods, reliable infrastructure, clean water, maintained parks, some of the youth programs because we lost federal funding as well. And fire response for Sugar House, our residential towers increasing and street repairs. I ask you to keep in mind how this budget works, because we're a city of 217,000 in the evening, but roughly a city of 400,000 in the daytime. So you're essentially asked to provide services for a city twice the size of our city. Which has pros and cons. I can answer questions on that, but before the mayor had asked for any proposed increase. We cut $3.2 million from the budget through department-wide cooperation and efficiencies. This included holding vacancies open longer, reducing contract, lowering overtime, and finding savings across city operations. But even after those cuts, maintaining our core services, we outpaced our available revenue. So with the next slide, please. We proposed a property tax increase. Oh, this is some of the costs that we see we increase, just to give you an example. So the full set of firefighter gear is $4,606. Imagine that. And asphalt, it doesn't show how much asphalt we're using per street. Just to get an idea, $44 per time increases to $64. Replacing intersection traffic signals of $1 million. So let's see. Those are some of the efficiencies that I identified. So what we're asking for in the property tax is to generate $13.5 million. So this is for a home value at $400,000. It would mean about $6.32 a month. Or for a home valued at $624,000.
Sorry, say that one more time.
$9.86 a month.
Yeah, so for a home $624,000, it would be $9.86. Cents. I don't know. 7 cents per month. And then that's that breakdown for where that money would go. Would go for capital improvements, infrastructure, again, our fire response. These are things that we can't not provide. So this is the 13.5%, 13.5 million will come to Salt Lake City. That's the Salt Lake City portion of the property tax. You may see other increases from your property tax, but ours will equate to roughly 28% of that. Just so you know. And one more minute. Okay, sorry, I'm going to keep that up. Yeah, this is what I was sharing before. Going on to the next one. And this is for commercial property value for property $624,000, about $14.37 a month. Our commercial property $1 million, it's about $28.74 a month. So utility and waste rates. So this changed, we are also basically at the same time, a change for public utilities, waste and recycling. So you can estimate that if you're living in a residential tower, you're not outside, you're not using water outside, you'll be paying minimum $21.63 a month. If you're a high-end residential use of sewer and water, you'll be paying about $88.
Yeah, a question. So are those taxes for public utilities also in addition to the property?
Correct. The question was, are those public utilities fees in addition to the property tax? That's correct. We also have the waste and the waste rates that are also for street lighting. I put that slide in there. For street lighting, it's increased $2.60 a month per residential household. Stormwater is proposing $1.75 increase for residential household. Again, the garbage cards or garbage bins, about $3 for the month. Make sure that I'm gonna pass this card around so that you have a QR code you can scan and get to the budget. We want to hear from you. We want to hear, I know the city council that's in their hands now. I've got those links listed on this card that I'll be passing around. Please take the opportunity to voice your concerns. May 19th, city councils have public hearing, and June 2nd. We also have an open house at City Hall, both of those days. You can come before city council meeting, ask your questions. We've got, the mayor's office will be staffing an open house to answer any of those questions. And we also have the link on here that you can put your comments in, or you can call me, or you can email me. The last thing I want to share is we have an affordability resource guide. It is our times, and I think the council member made a little bit of chat that we refer to people living on a fixed income. And that is difficult when we see increases because they're living what they're trying to project after they retire to the future, and as costs increase, it gets that limited resource gets smaller. So I brought along this resource guide to help answer any of those concerns to our resources, make them more available. And again, I can connect to those as well. Any other user? Thank you.
Opposed, must take it offline. On the estimates on property tax increases, you have a star next to that because the valuation on commercial properties is not publicly available. So how are you estimating that? And how can we do a better job on making sure that we're taxing the full value of commercial space?
I have to follow.
Yep, well, and I put it out there because I know it's too sensitive for a discussion tonight, but that's something that the city and the station probably start working on.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so like I said earlier, the way we have this structure, we've got our two different house representatives that cover our neighborhood. And so we've got 10 minutes first for Grant, and then 10 minutes for what we call your JDP, right? So 10 minutes for JDP, and then you guys will come together and the neighbors will ask you guys questions, you guys can ask each other questions. We just have open discussion time, and then I'll cut it off when we need to move on to our last agenda item. So we'll have a lot of time for discussion. So Grant's up first, I will pull up his slide then.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm glad that JDP is here. I stand on the shoulders of giants. I don't know what I'm doing up there. JDP sits behind me. She's already aware. And so she knows all the details, so she makes the magic happen whenever I do. Or she tells me what to do. So when we stand up here together, question, save the easy ones for me, save the hard ones for her. That's just what I am. Got a slide deck. Look at it. It's all fun. It's got my my own campaign signs on it. And there should be a present button someplace. There we go. Look how fun is it, even dances and everything like that. That's the production value of Canva. But if you just go ahead and advance through it, what I want to do a few disclaimers here is I give the legislative update. We passed 541 bills into law this year. And I'm only gonna hit about like 10 of them, and JDP is gonna hit the other 541. He's gonna do it real quick in 10 minutes. But what I'm trying to do is focus mostly on bills that have most community impact. Also, something I want to point out is this is a nonpartisan community council. And the legislature is inherently partisan, and things I'll talk about are inherently partisan. And what I wanted to point out is just because I have a belief system doesn't mean that I'm trying to flush anyone else's. I encourage viewpoint diversity. Just ultimately, bipartisanship and partisanship comes with the nature of the piece. Austin, if you take me forward here, boom, legislative update. Let's go one more. Let's talk about SB 242. This was a bill that surfaced about 2 years ago and came back again this year. This was a bill that came from the Senate that really tried to impede the city's ability to manage their own roadways. And what they wanted to do was really kind of put a moratorium on any sort of major renovations the city wanted to make investments in their infrastructure, think bike lanes, and pedestrian byways, that sort of thing. We had to continue to negotiate this. Where we landed was better where we began, but it still is going to cause Salt Lake City, I think, some issues because UDOT will have to make a final approval for major thoroughfares, things like 4th South and 300 West. The good news, it doesn't impact smaller byways, neighborhood byways, but it still could cause some disruption to accessing master plan in traffic development and infrastructure development. Sorry, I'm gonna go quick, and so write down your notes, that way you can ask these questions to JP. For those of you with kids, the legislature did pass a K-12 cell phone belt-to-belt ban. So your kids can't use your cell phones during class. One of the more controversial and interesting bills, but that made it all the way through, signed by the governor. Austin, if you're gonna be through. Taxes. Taxes are a theme today, and they're definitely a theme of the legislative session in 2026. I'd say probably the biggest focal point throughout session were the different areas of tax discussion that we entered into. Big highlights here. At the time, it kind of felt more significant, but gas tax in the state was cut 6 cents. This is before everything skyrocketed about $4. But these laws all go into effect today, so maybe you get about 6 cents of relief per gallon of bonds moving forward. Income tax really marginal. The legislature really wanted to make the claim that the state cut income taxes for the 6th year in a row. And I can't remember, and the JDP will call me out if I get these numbers wrong. I think it was something to $130, $150 million allocation for income tax cuts at a 0.05% rate. I think the median amount of money that or the median person is going to get is between $40 and $60. And so once again, it's some relief, but I think it's relatively nominal for the expense the state put into it. A little bit of tax hikes, but not tremendous. The tax hikes on nicotine and tobacco products that goes into effect today. And then adult materials, pornographic materials are also going to have a tax that will reinvest in enforcement mechanisms to keep minors inoculated from accessing that. Also, if we move forward. Hey, that's me. Want to highlight a few victories. A lot of people think that Democrats can't go up to a supermajority and get things done, and that's not true. JDP's prolific. She passes the most amount of bills each year. I'm going to keep highlighting it. I was a freshman. This was my second session in my first term. I was still able to pass 3 bills into law. These are all passed by the governor, signed by the governor, passed into law, and are effective as of today. HB 53 is a bill I'm really proud of, and credit to my friends across the aisle that helped me out with this one. This maintains a program where the state keeps jobs for adults with qualifying disabilities that can't get employment. So adults with qualifying disabilities that need employment and work with community rehabilitation programs, get placement with state workforce openings. That program is going to continue for another 10 years. It's going to get sunset. We saved it. And we got some report back requirements, so I'm glad to say that we're going to have that in Utah for a long time to come. Court fine reform, last year passed a law that said if you're a criminal defendant, you're sentenced to do some, like a judge tells you you have to do, therapy classes, some sort of substance abuse or mental health rehabilitation. You can take the receipts of that treatment and then hand it to the court book credit against your fine. A lot of judges weren't enforcing it last year, and so we went in and said, no, seriously, I mean it, you gotta enforce this law. I'm a public defender in real life, and a lot of people are coming to me asking if they only had money for one, do they pay their fine or they focus on treatment? And I said, that's a stupid question. No one should have to be putting that guy's 22. So hopefully that resolves it. And finally, SB 283 created a whole bunch of technical reforms to court access. For example, people seeking protective orders were being charged a surcharge when they were making their filings for protective orders, was completely unnecessary. The law was ambiguous as to whether or not that should happen, and it was needlessly expensive. So we clarified that didn't have to exist. We made a lot of different clarifications that will hopefully increase the ability for ordinary people to access the courts. And also, you move forward. With the legislature, is always one step forward and then like giant hop backwards. I made the slide deck shortly after legislative session, and I was proud to report about all these bills that we passed about mitigating the lake. And indeed, we did pass a lot. But if you're following the news, stuff like data center reporting seems not as significant as it did 24 hours ago. I mean, credit to Representative Cofer on the other side of the aisle. She made data center water reporting as a public requirement moving forward. And there was a lot of different, very creative irrigation and conservation, leasing and rights rearrangements to get more water in the Great Salt Lake. Awesome. As you all know, there's a proposal for a hyperscale data center in the northern part of the state that kind of took a lot of us by surprise and is kind of just flying through without any sort of meaningful scrutiny. I'm sure we'll get to that in the comment section, but what I'm trying to say is we tried to protect the lake, and now we really have a lot more work to do. Austin, if you could advance me. Let's talk about some flops. Hit that button one more time. I want to see this whole stance has failed on. Boom! What was really special about this session was not necessarily what we accomplished, but what didn't happen that would otherwise happen, but for the work of people like you, who work in the backgrounds, killing things that are awful. If you guys remember this, you know, on the other side over here on Central City Community Council, I think you guys have a boundary line of Party Hill Boulevard. There's some guy, I forget his name, but he's a representative from up north. And he had this clever idea that he was going to come into our district and start renaming things. And wanted to rename Harvey Milk Boulevard to Charlie Kirk Boulevard. The good news is this bill went absolutely nowhere. Credit to Equality Utah, Salt Lake City, Aaron Mendenhall. There was a coalition of a lot of people that worked really hard behind the scenes, because what was really cool about this, not only did it like fail, but it didn't even get out of the gates. It never was assigned out of the rules committee to any substantive committee for a real hearing. So this one was dead before it hit the floor, and I'm glad to say it didn't go it. Austin hit the. There was the flag wars are over. Hit the button again. I want to stand. It goes boom. Fail. I like that. Flag wars continued, and I think it's finally put to rest. The Representative Matt McPherson had this bill that said that if you want a city flag, it has to go through a state commission, and they have to approve it through the state. You can have these other ceremony flags, blah 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 blah. Moral of the story, didn't go anywhere. And I think that we're finally at a point where we can recognize our various communities without any more scrutiny from the state trying to intercede that. Austin, if you could advance the slide. Vote by mail restrictions, hit that button, next day failed. Once again, the legislature tried to really impede the right to vote by mail, which I don't understand, because many members of the legislature represent rural communities. And if you live in a rural community, access to a ballot box is really, really difficult. Sometimes the only option you have is to mail things in. And this proposal was to require county clerks to have just people posted up by ballot drop boxes to ID when you drop off your ballot. Is very impractical. And the good news is it didn't go anywhere, so vote by mail is still very much intact. And Austin, if you take me through, ban on food assistance, this also failed. Same guy from up north, he wanted to bar any sort of public assistance to anyone that couldn't demonstrate their citizenship. And that included food assistance, like that included like subsidized meals for children in school. It included the access to shelter for those who are on shelter. Like you have to bring your passport with you to demonstrate that you have citizenship to qualify for survival for the most basic necessities. So really violent bill. It was disgusting. The brilliant thing about this is that, you know, sometimes I get really mad about the folks on the other side of the aisle, but a lot of them had the courage to step up and say no. Representative Karen Peterson, unfortunately, won't be coming back, came up on the floor and made a motion to hold it, and just put this bill into limbo, and then it never came back. A part of it, weird, it's ugly, had another bill that the House unfortunately passed, but no one in the Senate was willing to touch it, and that just died in limbo as well. And so, you know, so some dignity actually prevailed for all this nastiness. I think there's one more, Austin, if you could advance it. Same guy from up north introduced a lot of really nasty bills targeting members of the trans community. Namely trying to undo a lot of the Utah Compromise, trying to undo gender marker changes, for example. And did all kinds of nasty stuff, included a provision that you can say vulgar or nasty things on license plates against members of the trans community. The spirit of it was purely malicious. But once again, the good news is that it almost entirely failed. A little bit of HB 183 squeezed through. They took that bill away from Representative Lee. They gave it to another representative. Stripped of all its substance. What it did do is it changed the word gender to sex in the entire state code. Which I still objected to because of the spirit and of that legislation. I voted against it. Our entire caucus voted against it. But the good news is substantive stuff that would have really hurt people was stripped away from these bills. And Austin, hit advance one more time. I think that's it. Okay. Without further ado, I thought that I was under my 10-minute. Hopefully, I'm going to pass it to the real star of the room, JDP, Jennifer Dailey-Provost. Give her a big shout out.
I think that one more time, really quick, thank you, Reverend Father. And I don't have slides and I don't have this panache. But I do really appreciate the kind words. And for those of you who are lucky enough to live in Representative Miller's district, you are, in my opinion, very well represented. It is a privilege to serve with him in the House. I'm really excited I'm gonna get through a list really quick. But I'm really excited to present with you here in the next couple of minutes. So there's a bit of crossover on what Representative Miller mentioned that I will go over as well. Budget implications, it feels like 1,000 years ago when we were going through appropriations subcommittees this last year. But executive committee, executive leadership and leadership on the other side of the aisle, the Republican side of the aisle, started off the year with telling all of the appropriations subcommittees that we had to look for 10% cuts in our budget to account for budget uncertainty, decreasing tax revenues, the fact that HR 1, which many people call a big beautiful something, I refuse to use that term, so I'll always call federal bill HR 1 because we pin our income tax to the federal level in some ways. We automatically had $130 million decrease in revenue that we had to account for even before coming into the session. And like Representative Miller said, our legislators we're dead set on having yet another 6-year in a row income tax cut, which he mentioned accounts for an average family in the state of Utah between $34 and $50 a year. And that's $34 to $50 a year is not nothing for families. I don't want to minimize that. But the hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts in essential services that come at the cost of that is very challenging, especially for somebody like me. I sit on social services appropriations, which funds all the budgets that support all the programs for our most fragile human beings in the state of Utah. We have real conversations this year about cutting families from DSPD care. We already have an average 13-year waiting list for DSPD people on the wait list for Division of Service People with Disability. So I could talk for hours about the budget, or anybody who knows me knows that I love to get really wonky about the budget. It is the most important thing we do. But because of the federal cuts that we had to absorb and the income tax cuts that the legislature passed, our budget actually shrank this year for the first time in, 10 years. And so, which is really hard to wrap your head around when we've got so many members of, the governor and speaker and the president constantly talking about Utah being the best economy in the state, the best run of the state. And, what I struggle with in that line of conversation is that these rankings that we do so well in are measures of how well the wealthy are doing. And I find that very problematic. If we look at, some of the families that are really struggling, affordability is hitting everybody. And so we are working really hard as a caucus to make sure that we're supporting policies that help families stay in their homes, afford childcare so that they have the opportunity for dignity at work. And so those things came up a lot in the budget discussions as well. Voter rights. Representative Miller did bring up some of the bills, one of the bills that did die But voter, or the ability to vote has fundamentally changed in our state. Primaries are coming up June 23rd, general election in November. Please double check your voting registration, especially if you're a woman who has changed her name at any point in your life, because I am married. My birth certificate does not match my driver's license. And so you have to have proof of citizenship, and showing up with a driver's license, even that I find problematic. Just make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row before you vote, before you mail in your ballot, so that your vote can be counted. Our Salt Lake County Clerk's office is phenomenal. We have the best people. If you have any questions, please reach out to them. If you have any problems with the clerk's office, please reach out to Representative Miller or myself. We want to make sure that please vote, help your neighbors vote, let us know if we can help you with any of that. So a lot of issues that came up during session that are still really salient: immigration, the ICE facility. We're still, even as leadership in the legislature are trying to get some answers about what's going on with this facility that ICE purchased. There are rumors that they decided to abandon it because Salt Lake City Council is making it really challenging for them to meet appropriate needs on the law. So I want to say, a huge shout out to the mayor and Salt Lake City Council for doing everything to try to pull that back. There's rumors that they may be looking at a site in Tooele County now because they find the politics might be more agreeable to their efforts there. But I assure you, our ability to do really big things to stop this are limited, but we are trying to do everything that we can to make sure that we at a minimum have information to pass along to our communities and some guidance on how to advocate for the humane treatment of human beings in our state. I personally work a lot in, I'll go over, I passed 4 bills this year. One that I'm really proud of that a constituent brought to me is child therapy amendments bill. It just ensures that any child in state's custody is able to maintain their therapeutic relationship if they end up moving to different homes. And so that continuity of care is a significant failure that has been in the system for a long time. And so we were able to get that passed. Every year I've got a medical cannabis bill. I'm really passionate about supporting our medical cannabis program, but for better or worse, I end up every year now doing psychedelics and cannabis and kratom and vape shops, and it's all just kind of, I guess, become my pigeonhole. So I did also pass legislation for better regulation on vape shops, so we don't have kids buying illegal products, we don't have stores stocking illegal products. I worked with Senator Mike McKell to pass the kratom ban, which is not really a ban, but we've eliminated effective today, May 6th. Well, there's a 1-year delay on the manufacturer, so companies can phase it out. Purely kratom will still be available in the state, in the specialty shops. And then one of the bills that I'm most excited about is the Veterans PTSD bill, which will creates a new research mechanism at Pennsylvania Mental Health Institute to do state funded medical research on psychedelics for veterans with treatment-resistant PTSD. It's a model that is one of its kind in the nation, that we're really excited that we hope other states follow suit, especially in light of the federal administration's announcement just the other day that they are looking to fast track rescheduling and opening up research opportunities. I have some strong opinions about that executive order. It's not as wonderful as people would like it to be, but it does open up some opportunities to make sure that we're capturing our states. We have world-class research facilities and resources here at the University of Utah and our Utah School of Higher Education. Couple of things, again, judicial funding, we did pass legislation, our caucus voted against it, but it expands the Supreme Court. We didn't love that, but it did provide, one of the things that would compromise in that is it did provide funding for more judges or for lower courts, which is actually really critical because people in our state, especially low-income people, represented the right to do it better than anybody, don't have access to the courts right now. One of the major bottlenecks is we don't have enough judges, we don't have enough clerks. And so we'll continue to support more funding for those resources going forward so that people have access to basic rights like the court system. Homelessness investment was dramatically down this year, only $10 million, but there was a little bit of funding for Representative Roberts passed $100,000 legislation, $100,000 in funding to provide infrastructure. For some neighborhoods that had entitled deeds but weren't being built because there weren't roads and whatnot, so it's, housing, affordable housing is more than just putting up buildings, and so we're trying to support legislation, reasonable, sensible legislation and things like that. I'm pretty sure I'm in 10 minutes. Goes by, yeah, okay, we're wrapping up there. I do have Trevor Lee on my list, and I know we were gonna say that. I just wanna take, for anybody who knows me, let's just take one moment and recognize that for a man who had 12 bills, he went home with 14, and we're really, really happy about that.
All right, let's get both good. So we want to do just open questions. We're leaving directed for both or one or whatever you want, but we have time.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything to say about the Rio Grande project, the Rio Grande planning, separate from like the Rio Grande other planning that they have going on over there?
Yep, so for context, this is a program that has, or a project that has wide community support and some very passionate advocates and volunteers working for it on a long time. Is anybody here not familiar with the Rio Grande plan? I don't want to, okay, so we don't know Rio Grande. The building itself was severely damaged in an earthquake in 2020. And so an insurance policy was filed to address the structural damage in that building. And I think that the insurance payout to fix the building and make it earthquake safe is about $54 million. It's been paid out. And so now that it's structurally sound, it's standing, but it's not deeply functional. It's not, hasn't been returned to good use. To full use, and it was a little bit compromised even before the earthquake. And so the legislature did decide that now that the 54 million insurance got it to as far as it's going to go, there was no legislative appetite to invest more money to make it a building that be usable. And so they contacted the University of Utah and said, we will give you this building if you commit to, investing in it to make it a usable space once again, and that in doing that, you won't come back to the legislature and ask for more money for that. So the University of Utah said, yeah, take it on, we'll find donors, we'll make programming, we'll make it something. And so that has been turned over to the University of Utah. My husband. You're on speaker and we're still talking. Hello. Okay, back.
So I mean, we've got a lot of citizen support for it.
Yeah.
But it seems like we don't have a lot of political support. And I understand like the oddness of the university kind of taking ownership of, I mean, it makes sense from all these other standpoints, but like overall, we're gonna need to have a lot of different transportation work done on those roads over there regardless. There's gonna be.
So I was getting to that. The challenging thing is that now that the building's been turned over to the university, it makes the whole entire project much harder to, it's less feasible. Because that building was.
The university is usually a pretty good player.
And it does, I wouldn't say that it doesn't have political support, I would say it doesn't have financial support on the political side. Everybody who hears about the project loves it. I mean, the speaker got a really cool idea, but it's estimated, and I've had people tell me if the estimation is low, $1 billion investment. That will never pay for itself.
The investment that we're gonna have to do there anyway is already.
Is not gonna be $1 billion. So like the cost of sinking the train is incredibly expensive. And the hard part is how does it pencil out economically?
Right.
Well, it's a good project, it doesn't go very much. And I love the idea. I love the idea. I've been in Europe where they've got these amazing train stations that are sunk below ground and they're turned into beautiful community spaces. But just for context, if we're trying to figure out $1 billion project, it would cost $750 million to fully electrify the entirety of going both directions. Which is less than that small block section in downtown Salt Lake. And so I don't say it's not a good program, I'm just saying these are the decisions that $1 billion, these are the counter arguments on $1 billion decisions that
are really hard to make.
And I'm a little bit jaded, just I
Yeah.
believe in the story that it will be, financially viable because of the economic benefits of it. And I know that there's like a feasibility study that needs to be done there, and I see the value of what you would do to get rid of that area of our city there and bring East and West Side together
Well,
and,
You're right, we're not getting rid of it, it's still gonna be, there will still be investment, but I actually don't, I would love to hear more about it, you've told about it. Creating another economic impact to pay for itself, because I haven't, that's.
Well, I can kind of jump in because I love Rio Grande, but I'm friend, those guys are some of the most incredible grassroots organizers that I've seen. And what they're talking about is that the total economic revenue that will generate will far outweigh the cost. The trick is, how do you capture that, and like a tax mechanism or an investment zone, that mechanism that can get the money there, and can we get the investment money up front? I mean, don't get me wrong at all, I support the plan, I sweep my wheel all I can up on the hill because I like it. Everything you said is correct, we gotta connect the two sides. Every time I go on the west side, I got behind the train, didn't want to put my hair out. I used to live on North Temple for a few months. And you couldn't, emergency services would be late because they couldn't get to the train, problem. But the question is, how do we initiate it? The state's budget each year is $30 billion, which sounds like a lot, but in the scheme of big money, it's not. And all that money is pretty much spoken for going into each session. I sit on criminal justice appropriations. We don't have a lot of money to kind of deal with. We're dealing with a couple $100 million. It's usually spoken for if you've got a highway patrol fleet that you gotta have maintenance for, and you gotta buy cars for. And you'd be surprised how much Microsoft Word and PDF, Adobe, that costs for the courts, in a giant lump sum. And of course, all the person we have to pay for in the state, the money's hard to come up with. So if there's a way to get the money, it'll happen. The trick is just making it happen, driving down them.
Seemed like there was opportunity, honestly, during the Biden administration, because they were opening up a lot of infrastructure funds, and a lot of that was pulled back, fortunately.
Yeah. Well, and a big part of the city budget that they're talking about is like that we still have our great, AAA credit rating, that we have this ability to be able to borrow money and that's a great investment for us. I don't know, $1 billion on, but also just the next step. This is just a feasibility study to see if the economics would flesh out or maybe. Because if it doesn't, then we stop talking.
No, but I like it. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
I'm curious about what conversations, if any, are happening at the state level, with regard to other reductions in federal funding for science research. In my brain, it's like, okay, federal government isn't doing it anymore. Will the states do it? I know the state does fund quite a bit of science. Is that a conversation?
So we're public health too.
Yeah, so I'm a researcher and I teach at medical school, I do research for public health. And there have been many people in my division who have lost grants, mid-grant, and it's scary times. Representative Karen Peterson passed legislation that does, and it was funded $50 million, state funded for research that I've been in conversations with USHE, and the LFA, the Fiscal Analyst Office, to figure out what the next steps are gonna be, and they're setting up a mechanism where applications will basically flow through the executive's office at each university. So president's office at each university will get applications from
That just announced like a week or two ago?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly, yeah. And so I like this model a lot because of the nature of federal politics right now, and this whiplash that we've been experiencing because so much federal funding was pulled back. 2.7 billion in cancer research funding alone last year, which just absolutely takes my breath away. I like the model where states do the first dollars in, and the federal government will come and match that, and the state has been really proactive in saying first dollar in. Federal government's not blinking yet, and this is gonna take, this is generational change that it's gonna take to fix this, but I like the model, number one, because the state's a little bit more, has more control and is less subject to the whims of federal funding decisions. The $50 million if you're a researcher is actually a really small amount of money, it's better than nothing. The strings on that funding though is it has to be research that somehow shows that the work that's done will create positive economic impact. So whatever research that you would like to propose, make sure you're creatively figuring out how it's going to help the economy.
House related sense.
What's that? No, please tell me.
Said our house related to sex.
Yeah, okay. And certainly don't make it about DD5. Great question.
I'd like to ask a question that's not related to the work you do, or maybe it is that okay? You're very intimidating and perfect amount when it comes to time management, so 30 seconds is all I ask. Representative Lopez Chavez was correct. I live in the first step buildings. It is deeply affordable. But once you get to a certain income level, they say you can either stay at the market rate or you can move. And so I'm kind of in a limbo area, but some of the issues that I've seen, I have to eat some crow because I spoke out in favor of the rezone. They're opening up a bunch of other properties. The last year or so, there's a lot of concerning issues when it comes to like crime and stuff that I've seen, like drug deals. The other day, they were catcalling minors from across the street, yelling just really inappropriate behavior that's public facing. Just all sorts of stuff, like cigarette stuff. There's tons of benches just everywhere. So I'm wondering, I'm on a gag order because I've been complaining so much. They're basically like to shut up or move. So I'm wondering, like, I'm kind of like, should I be moving? But I want to know what resources are available from the city to keep the first step building accountable. As they grow, I'm just concerned that the lackluster response in keeping the overall neighborhoods that they're in clean and safe and like accountable for those residential clients that are, in my opinion, doing incredibly degenerate types of behaviors that are out in the public across from Smiths. And I feel like it allows other people to see that as a safe place for that to continue to go. I'm so happy you're in public safety. I know I have an ally in you, so I'm ready to invest. Thank you for all the work that you do. I know I have an ally in you, and so I'm looking for city resources at this point because they cut me off. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it.
But that's not true. We got against recovery because they're integral in my being sober, but I work in recovery, and I'm at the point where I'm doing well, and I want to see for step house do well. But right now, that whole section is like a mess from morning until night. There was a point where there was a dead dog that they pulled from the sidewalk, put a towel over it, that had been hit by a partner playing football on the sidewalk, blocking it so people couldn't get by. Yeah, this happens all the time. Well, this was last summer, but this was one example of many. There was a car, like it looked like there was a party, and we were getting like things out of the trunk of a car that was pulled up on one of the driveways. You're all familiar with the property. There's like 3 buildings. Yeah. And it's like they're constantly out there, 15, 20 guys, and they're just like.
There's arguments all the time. I see stuff.
Arguments all the time. Bluetooth speakers, N-word,
And then turning to the list.
That's something.
So first step house uses city, state, and federal money to build the properties. And at every level of government, those entities should be holding them accountable. So as far as like city funds go, the city council controls what's called the RDA, the redevelopment agency's funds. And so if you talk with Ava and showed her these things, she controls the RDA's money. And then on the state, there's the housing corporation controlling the tax credits. So I could connect to these groups. You need more of those. Sean's very good.
I talked to Sean yesterday. I didn't like it.
I know Sean Miller. Sean's not too accessible to me. I also know Austin will get to
me.
And I really, I hate to actually have to, and I love that you bring this up, the really bad news is that 10% cut that I talked about, the exercise that we all have to go through at the beginning of the session. We didn't end up cutting 10% of the social services budget. It actually, relative to the whole part of the budget, had the smallest cut of any of our sort of appropriations, and we kept up because it's such a big budget, dollar wise, it was one of the deepest cuts. The first step house lost almost all of the state money this year, and it was a devastation, and that in the short term is going to continue to exacerbate everything we see. And so the question and the conversation that we have to have, and this is a conversation I have with my colleagues all the time. People have to stop putting blinders on to these. And I'm not saying this is a solution. This is an outrage. Like, this is what keeps me up at night. This is why we go fight. And these are the losses that we take, and they're very personal to us.
I would like for us to have more conversation on this because starting with the budget year, July 1st, it's gonna get worse. Because First Ed House was it was one of those that was on the top block. And unfortunately, there were too many nonprofits in the advocacy space who heard, oh, I'm gonna lose 10% of my budget, that's really gonna suck. And then at the very end of the session, they were like, oh, you mean 10% of the whole budget, and my whole budget is part of that 10%. And it's a devastating casualty that came with those budget cuts, so that we could give, you know, families that made $250,000 a year a couple extra $100 this year. That is the state of politicking and budgeting in our state right now, and it has to change. It's not sustainable. I really think that we're at a point now, and as we pass these tax cuts every year, $1 billion over 6 years we've cut in income taxes. Now, yes, the biggest cut of that is education, and our colleagues are like, oh, it's fine, we've given teacher pay raises every year, but we'll even with while we're cutting income taxes. My concern is that we have more than trimmed all that, we're in flesh now, right? And that makes us not resilient in an economic downturn. And I'm really concerned about that, so.
I love talking, I just feel like some of the changes are mostly not cost at all, but more about accountability.
And that's a great conversation too, yeah.
You know, one thing that's free volunteer work. You know, more people engage more in their community, as non-budget items.
Sorry, I talked almost the whole time during our whole presentation.
For good reason, like I said, she's a smart one, and she's a minority whip for a reason.
I've just been, you know, I'm a little bit masochistic for 8 whole years.
I'm still do. But no, I don't know how much time we have left.
One last question.
Tim, a former legislator himself.
And I feel bad asking me asking a question if somebody else wants to, but first off, thank you for doing everything you do. Thank you for fighting against voter repression and voter depression. I think that's the whole objective. We need to kind of put them at a big contrast from the federal level within our own state and forces them maybe at the federal level to look at what we do in our state. But you have to keep reminding them, so thank you for reminding them of that. Maybe in the city lands, just 'cause that's what I'm doing now, and Austin and I were kind of having this conversation. We have some properties in the city that we could assist and help with turning our sheltered population into some opportunities. But we can't do it with the budget that's stretched so thin. And we've been gifted the state prison now. The inland port, SAT, the entertainment zone. So all these additional costs that we incur as a city for infrastructure needs and demands, roads, water lines, sewer lines. It limits what you're able to do as a city when somebody says, how come we don't have more resources to address homelessness or provide opportunities? We gave a great opportunity with the micro shelter community of 600 West and 300 South. The trailers that persons moved into, city council had funded it, $500,000, and it's successful. It works. And the state needs to replicate that in other areas throughout the state. If we want to address this no camping ordinance, give people an option. Where else can they go? Give them a parking lot where they can have a dumpster and a bathroom and a place to park their vehicle. Because I stayed up listening to those conversations last night that they kept coming forward. And a lot of the people are working. I mean, truck drivers and city employees that Councilmember Chavez spoke about, working, living out of a vehicle and going to work the next day, just to have a shower means a world of, I mean, we take those things for granted. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, and that's kind of fighting time, but that's the kind of things I'm seeing through my lens. Help us, help you, help us, help you, help us. Just gives that little bit of a space where we can go the next step. And I think we're willing, I mean, we're looking at everything, yeah, constantly. It's just, we can't do it.
Well, I will thank you as well, and as a city employee, to our council, to our mayor, to every public servant that we work for, please pass on our thanks for the work you do as well. It's really frustrating as legislators when you hear people say, oh, it'd be so easy to just do this. This is probably the hardest, most consequential thing that we grapple with in policy is homelessness and
And social
the
services.
inability, social services, and the inability to build systems that ensure that everybody has resiliency. Now I'm getting into all of my public health preaching. I don't know what the next answer is going to be, but I will say I am looking forward to Tyler Clancy being our new homelessness coordinator. I think Tyler has already reached, he's left his seat in the legislature early to take on this role. He's already reached out to myself and many other legislators on a truth seeking mission, just, you know, and there's never gonna be a silver bullet to this, and so we have to, I know nobody here thinks there's this one answer that isn't found yet, we're all pragmatic enough. I'm hopeful that his work will get us moving in a more quickly in a better direction.
And Nick Coleman is a great trust too, if I can connect them to that partnership, it has to be that relationship that we here in city and state.
The reality is we're a society that's built to ensure that those who have the most continue to have most, it's self-perpetuating. In a perfect world, we need to completely rebuild all of our infrastructure and the way systems work together. So that everybody has built-in resilience. We don't have that, but. That's why we.
Thank you for doing it.
So the response from Brandon and about this.
Oh, no, I preach to the choir. No, you speak language, Tim, you know exactly how it goes up there, you've lived it. And you speak truth to power when you're talking about how the state's all about local control, let's Salt Lake City, and then they just kick us around. And they just, you know, require that we just handle our own unfunded mandates from them. And that everything we do is a problem, our roads are a problem for them, our people are a problem for them, and it's obnoxious, and it's not fair. But we'll continue to do what we can. I mean, what I really respect about JDP was not stop, just shower our comments. Bridge built rotary. And a lot of the successes that we've had, and a lot of times we have like, you know, Salt Lake City issues that are just on the forefront, where they're just kicking us around. Jen's just able to get in there and diffuse it. And Jen's a master budget, you know, like where there's very little to work with, somehow she still makes things happen. I mean, I didn't give her this credit. One of the victories that I had, it's really not my victory, it's Jen's victory, is she found $300,000 for a funding request I made for Utahns Facing Hunger. And it was approved around the same time that Trevor Lee went down. And this funding goes to provide meals, no questions asked. We don't care about your citizenship. If you're hungry, you ask for food, you get it. And that program's gonna be funded for the next 3 years. And I owe that to JDP. She's brilliant. So we're doing what we can and we're fighting where we can.
I just say one thing, that it is public service week, so please thank your public servants. Thank you so much for everything you do, all of you, for state, county, and city. So thank you very much.
And just FYI, so timing wise, we're gonna skip the changing of family definition, if that's okay. If you have an opinion, you know, go talk about it afterwards. But so Seth has been working on a refresh to our branding. And as long as you guys are okay with that, I think we'll do 10 minutes and it's 7:40. We can get to leave now, feel free to leave now, but.
I think it'll be like 5 minutes. I'm gonna go through this really quickly. Obviously much less important than the work that our representatives are doing. But this is who we are, how we represent ourselves. Branding, like clothing, is how you want to be perceived by other people, and also it reflects who you are as a person. Central City, I think, needs a new outfit. Right now, this one is a little boring, a little too intricate, especially for social media, small use cases. And it doesn't really have a brand. This is great, it shows where we are, but it doesn't really do much beyond that. So we did a survey, which these are the results from the survey. You guys said that if Central City were a person, they would be an urban pioneer, a creative soul,
and a historic storyteller. Next slide. And you also felt that the vibe of the new logo should be artistic and or modern and or classic. So what I did, I took all that information, I walked throughout the neighborhood over several days, took pictures of everything, and tried to put some stuff together to create a cohesive and versatile brand that raises our neighborhood's visibility, incentivizes participation, and better aligns our aesthetic with the community's identified core values. So as you're looking at this next slide, I want you to think about what does this brand look like on multiple platforms? Websites, social media, newsletters. We're going to sell you guys some merchandise. These are the three options that we as a board kind of settled on. The first one, historic storyteller, obviously takes the city and county building, that takes that same silhouette, modernizes it, makes it a little bit more versatile. Handwritten font with the 1960s sans serif font. The middle one is supposed to be a sort of abstract representation of the sandstone bricks that are a huge part of our historical value of our neighborhood. Also sort of taking a little CC with a sort of mid-century modern font as well. The third one is a more creative, artistic approach that's supposed to be a little bit more playful. Getting that colorful grassroots artistic vibe that you guys wanted to see. And so on these next slides, it's just kind of examples of how we're building this brand out a little bit. You can see this is a primary logo, taking some of the colors of the greens and the bricks and the blues that you guys identified in the survey. How does this look like for the neighborhood council? So when I'm looking at these, I think of this as a brand for the neighborhood, not just the community council. The community council is a part of the neighborhood, but the neighborhood is a much larger thing that encompasses a lot of people who may not have the time to come here. So how does this brand mark, how does this logo work for the neighborhood as a whole, but also for the neighborhood council? This next one is a little bit more playful, a little bit more fun, a little bit more youthful, abstract and all of these line works and these design motifs. Next slide. And then this one again is really playing into the brick that is sort of the historical foundation of our neighborhood. We're also modernizing it to reflect the growing residential or businesses that are coming into our neighborhood. So that was really quick. I know it's late. Next slide, I've got a QR code if you want to vote right now on your phones. We'll also be sharing this via email. So if you don't want to vote now and you want to take a closer look at this presentation, you can do that later on. So thank you guys very much. I hope one of these sort of fits what you guys imagined for the neighborhood. Ultimately, we want to think about murals on the street. We want to think about street banners. Like I said, merchandise. How can we make ourselves a legitimate organization that presents as such? So thank you guys very much.
Seth just put a lot of work into this, so thank you so much for your time to do it. It's great.
Question, the decision.